And good afternoon. Welcome to the podcast of It's Art. Let's talk about it. I'm joined today by a very special guest, Al Glann, a Tucson area sculptor who's got a show here at the Museum of Western Art called Poetry in Motion, the works of Al Glann. And Al, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Darrell.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I tell artists all the time, we sit down and talk about art over dinner, over drinks, and then I put a microphone in front of them and they freak out. But I don't think you're going to have that problem.
I'll be good with it. Don't worry.
Yeah. No, this is it's art. Let's talk about it. Somebody said, what's your podcast about? Art. It's just art. Let's talk about it. Show here at the Museum of Western Art opened last night, September 27th, and runs for about 6 weeks. And we're hoping people will come by to see it. Let's start off with the obvious question. What's your genre? What kind of art do you do?
I would probably call it contemporary Western.
Contemporary Western. And for you, those of you following along at home, we do have photographs on the website, links to Al's work and photographs of the work itself. And we want you to go out there and look at that. But your work is contemporary Western. And by that, it's not traditional sculpture in that it's not a filled out horse. Somebody described it as, it's pieces and parts really all put together. Talk about that style of work.
Okay. Part of it is from my drawing days and that sort of thing and developing sketches for this, was doing some quick sketches that kind of define, in this case, the horses, and following along the anatomy because I want to look at the muscle structure depending on the pose. And I'm really very interested in showing the energy, whether it's very dynamic or very subtle, is to define those characteristics of it. But I try to get the least amount down as possible, but you still get the idea exactly what it is.
That's really negative space, right?
Yeah.
You're working a lot in negative space.
Yeah, it's a lot of positive, negative shapes, which back in the day when I was teaching design, it was like following those shapes. What you see as a positive shape being very critical, and also what you see between the positive shapes, you have this negative space.
Yeah.
And that also becomes very much part of the design.
Yeah, a lady last night said, she walked up and said, I didn't think I was going to like this, and I love it. Love it, she said. It was just, but it's uniquely different. So how did you get your start in this? Let's go back in a number of years and start talking about a career. How'd you get to Tucson? How long have you been doing this? Has this always been something you've been doing? Or, let's talk about the history of Al Glann real quickly.
Okay, I grew up on a farm in Ohio, 500 acres, the only son, so I got to do a lot of work on the farm.
So you know how to do all this welding stuff, right?
But I've always been interested in art and always had a really good time working on it, had an interest in it. And being in a small farm town, we didn't have a whole lot of, education as far as the art went. So I ended up senior in high school. I go to a town that's about 20 miles away and take art classes there at night. And that kind of led me into going to college for it, which I ended up going to Columbus College of Art and Design in Columbus, Ohio. It's a good 4-year art school. And from that, I was doing a little bit of dimensional work, not that much because I wanted to go out and work in the field of commercial art. So I worked for about 8 years out in the graphic design illustration field. And I found out I couldn't sit at a desk all day. Just sitting at a desk 8 hours a day, every day, just drove me crazy. So after that time period, I went back to the school, started teaching there full time and teaching a lot of design classes. And being part of the school there, you have facilities. So I said I can start making 3-dimensional pieces again because I have actual facilities. I've got a welding shop, I've got a wood shop that I had access to. So I started doing sculpture after the first couple of years, and it's just blossomed after.
But why bent metal and sculpture the way you do it? Why not more of the traditional armature, clay packed on, that kind of stuff?
When I started getting into doing sculpture, I initially started with like wood and aluminum and painted it. And when I did shows, you get nicked up. And I said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to do steel. If it falls over, it's going to break whatever it hits. It's going to be fine.
But you can fix it.
Yeah, I can. Mostly it won't need fixing. But I really got into kind of working with steel and manipulating it. And so when I got into doing the horses, which was about 12, 13 years ago, I tried working in a friend of mine, here's some dense foam, try that, didn't work. Clay just didn't feel like, I can't do what I want to do with clay.
Right.
I can't get the shapes to stay because they're basically, a lot of them are delicate shapes. But in steel, I can cut them, grind them, sand them, weld them together, and they'll do whatever I want them to do.
And again, for those of you playing along at home, you'll see images at the bottom of the page of It's Art, Let's Talk About It. And our little every 3 or 4 minutes, we got to say, It's Art, Let's Talk About It, a production of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network. But you were doing all of this in Ohio. At some point, you moved to Tucson, Arizona. A lot of people, Ohio and then Tucson, that's a big step.
We originally I was teaching there, and moved to Phoenix because I could continue teaching that point. But it was more at the time my wife needed some better weather to live with, some warmer weather for her.
And it's definitely warmer in Tucson than.
So we got out to Arizona, and that worked out really well. And eventually I was spending a lot of my part-time working on sculpture.
But you were teaching it in Scottsdale or in Phoenix?
Yeah.
In Phoenix?
Yeah. Art Institute of Phoenix, I was teaching. And I got to the point where it's like, okay, can I do this full time?
Nice school, though. Yeah, good school for the arts.
Yeah. And after about 30 years of teaching, I'm going like, okay, I'm going to quit teaching. I'm going to just go full bore on the arts. And I don't know if I can do it or not full time because I've never done it in 40 or 50 hours a week. And that was a leap of faith for me. And it was a couple years really to get that on track and get moving with it. But yeah, after a couple of years, things began to take off, and I was doing some public art and getting commissions and having work in galleries. And so that ended up going forward. And it's just, I've been very fortunate that it's worked out so.
So really 2 careers. I mean, 3 if you count the farming part of, and the ranching that you set it all up, and then teaching in Ohio, teaching in Phoenix. And then, now, and you live in Tucson. Yeah.
Yeah. Phoenix was nice at the time, but it's gotten too big for me. It's just
certainly bigger,
a little more laid back, and where I don't have to deal with 7 million people on the freeways. And it's a much smaller place. It's got a really good arts community, both music and visual arts. So it's been a really good place to be.
Talk about your teaching for all those years, courses that you taught, the kinds of things that you taught. Was it all lecture, or was it hands-on teaching students how to do metal?
Most of it was hands-on. I mean, I did a lot of design classes, 2-dimensional design, 3-dimensional design, color theory, structural design. I did a lot of the graphic design classes because that's what I had a background in. We do publication design and that sort of thing, which really helped in my fine art career because then I could do my own ads and work with magazines and stuff.
Yeah, and you did an ad, actually 2 ads for the Museum of Western Art. Yeah. When I found out that you had that skill set, we let you actually design your own ad for Western Art Collector, Western Art and Architecture. There were several of them we did.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that's nice to be able to do that myself, not have to depend on somebody else because I got a look that I want for my work and want to keep it consistent. So it's okay. Yeah, at this point, I've got all the parts to it. Putting it together makes it pretty easy to do. So I still have all the programs, so that makes it.
How many students did you have? I mean, over the years, classes were how big?
They're usually about 25. They were full classes.
And this would involve fabrication from the beginning? I mean, everything.
It was just thousands of students. I figured out one time close to 5,000 students I've had. So yeah, it's a good.
And what would they go on to do? What would those students go on to do? Become artists in their own right?
Yeah, or basically, for doing foundation classes, we had a lot of everybody in there, and whether they're industrial design or graphic design or advertising or illustration. And so that was fun to have different people that you're teaching with, but you're teaching them the basics. And it was like, we're here for real. We're going to work. In this classroom is a studio type environment.
So they weren't just learning the theory. They were actually having to put
They were working, yeah.
They were to put the hands on.
They're hands on every day. And it's like, when I started teaching that, I put notes on the board. And I said, you're going to have to learn how to take notes. Because if you go in with a meeting with a client, you don't write it down, you get it wrong, right, you lose the job. So in this class, I put it on the board, you write it down, I do drawings, you put those drawings down. So you develop those skills when you're talking to someone else and say, okay, what do I want?
Yeah. And you were teaching also the fabrication end of it, the welding, the grinding.
Just about everything. Yeah. I mean, a lot of those classes we were doing like smaller models. Not something gigantic, but I mean, to do a model and say, well, now you can take this model that's tabletop size, and now we can blow it up to 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot version of it, just because you figured out all the design elements on this scale. And now it's easier to take it back and say, okay, let's scale this up and see how it's going to work on a larger scale.
And you're having to do a lot of the traditional stuff we talk about with, if you will, traditional sculptors, in that you're having to do the lost wax process and do the molds and.
Yeah, I mean, because my pieces, I mean, when I first went to Founder with the seal pieces, they were like, you want us to do what? And it's just, they figured it out. I mean, Founders really know. They have some really, really talented artisans there who are really good at what they do. And in working with them and getting them to understand what I'm doing and how to do it, they solve the problems as far as, okay, let's translate this sculpture into a bronze or into a mold that can become a bronze. And then when I get to patinas, it was like, let's have some fun with patinas.
Right.
Let's play with color. Let's play with texture. Let's do things we haven't done before.
But you did this for 30 years teaching, and then made the jump to retirement, if you will, and started a whole new career of actually doing what you were teaching for all those years.
Yeah, pretty much it. Yeah. I mean, it's like I'm doing it for myself now, and it's a challenge really to jump into one career that you've really played with on the side, but then you're going to make it full time. And it's okay, I got to become a business person. I have to do marketing. I have to create the pieces. I have to go out and do the shows and do interviews and everything else. And it's like you get to do everything. Yeah. And you can't be afraid that you can't do it. You just have to okay, let's just go do it.
And that's been one of the pieces of advice that I've heard artists all along during this podcast talk about to students. You just have to do it. You have to be brave and jump out there and make a living with this. And that's a scary proposition. You know,
I think it always is. I mean, it's one of those things. Am I going to be successful at it? And whatever you want to define success as. But you have to be able to go out there and do it. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
Somebody doesn't like the work. Yeah, a lot of people may or may not like your work. It doesn't really mean anything. If enough people like your work, I'm happy camper.
Yeah.
Let's get the work out there. And I enjoy doing it. I know it's good. And I'm always trying to do different things and try to change what I'm doing or get better at what I'm doing. That's just, that's the part of it. It's like you can just keep going with it forever.
Yeah. Talk about your regular creative day, if you will. Are you one of those guys who has a very set and very rigid schedule, or are you just whenever the muse hits you?
Once I started doing this full time, it was like, before I was selling any work or getting any commission work, and it's okay, I'm doing this 6 days a week. I get up, I go to the studio, I put in at least 6 hours in the studio. Come home, I'd work on the computer trying to find shows or do this or that or do design work. And it's just, I'm doing it until it works. I'm going to work 6 days a week, 50 weeks a year until this thing takes off. And I'm still working at least 5 days a week on it.
And it's taken off, right? I mean, there's in addition to the small works, and most of the ones in our show are the smaller works. There's one very large for some monumentals out there in the community. Talk about those.
I've been really fortunate. I started getting some public works probably about second or third year I was actually doing full time. I picked up some.
Oh, we're still recording. Okay, we're still recording. Tom, you're going to have to edit that. But monuments.
Yeah, the monument work, the public art pieces or some of the big commission pieces, I just started doing those. I mean, initially started doing the horses just on my own, and I did a 3/4 size. And so if I can do 3/4 size, I can do full size. And then those became popular in some of the galleries I had work in. And then they also ended up being some public art pieces in Tucson, which we have this big loop around Tucson, which is for biking and hiking. And I've got actually 4 pieces on there now.
Yeah, I went out when I was in Tucson visiting you and picking up the work. I went out on the loop and saw a bunch of public art. So it seems like Tucson's they're proud, big on.
Yeah, it's a really good town for the arts, I think. It's like they're really kind of into adding more and more of that work that's out in the public realm, which I think we're teaching people this is all different kinds of art that you put out there that people can interact with, but you don't, because a lot of people don't go to museums or don't go to galleries. But this is out. You're taking a walk every day and you're running into a half a dozen or a dozen pieces of unique sculpture or murals that we have. I mean, Tucson's well known for the building murals that are it's just 5-story building.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really some amazing work out there.
Right. So you try to stay at it 5-6 days a week, have a pretty regular day with it, always looking at shows. You mentioned earlier galleries. Talk about your galleries. Which ones have you been in? Are you in? Is it like every artist, it comes and goes?
It comes and goes. I mean, there's a couple galleries I'm in that have been in for about 10 years. But I mean, it's a transition because they change administrations in there and you have different directors, and sometimes they love your work and other times it's, yeah, we're not that thrilled with it. So it's like, that's fine. I'll go somewhere else. So I don't have a problem with that. I mean, normally what I do if I'm going to a city, like say Santa Fe, is I go around take one day and I go around to the galleries and just walk through and see what they're showing. And it's my work in here.
Right.
Or it won't work. So it's like when I come back the next day, then I'll sit down and talk with them about it and see who's interested.
But you've had some success with galleries and shows, and I mean the last 10 years has been really important. And now you're on your second museum show. This was the second one.
Yes, my second solo museum shows.
I saw your work for the first time. Joshua Rose, pointed it out to me, and you were at the Fippen. I want to say Fippen.
Fippen Museum.
Fippen Museum.
Yeah, which is up in Prescott.
So that museum did a show called Poetry in Motion, which I love the title, so I just went ahead and kept it. I stole from them.
Yeah, I said, where'd you come up with that? It's like, oh, I just came up with it. I said, okay. I mean, I've got an old sculpture from about 10 years ago, that title. This has nothing to do with horses, but it was just like, did you steal it from me? Apparently not.
People think I'm a genius because they love the title, and I just stole it from the Fippen. My apologies to the Fippen Museum if you're listening. We just confiscated, but it's what we do here in the art world. Is that you're mostly known for your horses, but you've done well other subject matter. There's a bobcat in our show, a couple of ravens,
I got a hawk, a moose, a bison. Yeah, some different. I mean, it's Western theme animals and birds of prey. Because the ravens, like I was doing horses, and I was up at I think the Grand Canyon, and I'm reading about ravens are the spirit brother of the horses. And I'm going, then I'm going to do some ravens. If they're related from culturally to the horses, then they should be part of the repertoire animals that I do, or the birds that I do.
And they're way cool. They really are. Those ravens I think, a big hit in the show.
Yeah, it's been fun to do. I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, horses, when I started in the horses, I can start with legs. When I started the raven, it's like, oh, what do I start with? The legs really don't matter that much.
They don't have any legs. Yeah.
Okay, I'll build the body and this and that. I mean, on the hawk, I did the wings first because I found this photo that was this fabulous pose, and I said, I have to do this. I had the photo for about 3 years before I actually did it. But it's okay, I'll build the wings first, and I'll figure out where because I have their positions right. I can put the body in, then I can put the detail on the head, and the feet are in there also, which when they're flying, it's like the feet are just tucked in. Your landing gear on an airplane, you can't hardly even see them. So it's always amazing to watch.
Put your professor hat back on, and let's talk to some of those young people out there who are listening. We've 4,500 listeners for this podcast, which is pretty cool. It's growing every day, but we're finding the demographic on that is a lot more younger artists, right? I mean, those people who are starting off, because I've been preaching for several years, workshops, mentorship, even so much as, even though I'm a product of an art school, a university art school with a PhD in it, I'm also a huge advocate of getting it done and taking a mentorship, an internship, doing lots and lots of workshops. I know the schools of design are great. As you mentioned, you were in Phoenix and Ohio, but that student today, what do you recommend they do? I mean, how do they get started? How do they become an Al Glann?
Yeah, overnight success for 30 years. It's only
I've heard that before. Yeah.
I think a lot of it is getting out and being around the community of artists. I mean, some of the people who really influenced me a lot were obviously much older than I was, either by, 20 years or 10 years or whatever. But I mean, I can learn so much from people, and I still do. Because to me, it's like you're always learning. You're not going to stop learning at some point. If you're developing your skill, keep developing your skill until you get even better than what you even thought you could be. And I think when I was teaching that, you'd see students who would all of a sudden the light would go on. And sometimes, I mean, I had a C student my freshman year, and she came back, and I had her in her sophomore year, first semester, C student. She comes back second semester, and bang, all of a sudden, she's an A student from then on. And that's, I don't know what happened. I mean, it wasn't me, but something changed in her or something clicked in her where it's like, you made this quantum leap. And it's like all of a sudden your work is that much better and you really focus on what you're doing. And she's still doing great work today.
Surround yourself with other artists.
I mean, you have to be run up, it's like when I first went out and went full time, like I said, I knew an artist in Phoenix who'd been a full-time artist for 30 years. And it's like we were hanging out together and talking about work, and I'd go down to the studio and just like, I don't know if I can do this or not. And can I really do it? And so I got to the point where it's like, just do it. You have to focus on what you need to do and not be afraid to have failures. Yeah, I got things that don't work. That's fine. You learn from them. I mean, that's where you learn. You don't learn from your successes as much as you learn from your failures. I think that's what people really don't understand very much. Is that failures are a good thing because it forces you to overcome them. What am I weak at? Sometimes I'd do a show, like the weekend shows, I wouldn't sell anything. I'd be driving back for a 10-hour drive and go, okay, what did I do wrong? What can I do better next time? It's just, okay, it's frustrating. It's sometimes depressing, but it's like you have to pick yourself up and, okay, what can you do to make it better?
Yeah, people ask me all the time in our shows that we do a roundup exhibition and sale in April of every year, and the artists are always calling and go, hey, what should I be painting? How big should I be sculpting? What pieces are selling? And if I knew the answer to that,
I don't think there is an answer to that. I think
the art market is what the art market is.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, if you want to make a lot of pieces, they'll probably be smaller. And if you're trying to get better at it, then yeah, do smaller pieces. So you get a sense of what you're really good at and your technique gets better and your design gets better. And then, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do, definitely.
But I mean, is it muscle memory? Is it time on task? Is it just dedication in doing it? Or, I mean,
all the above.
Or all the above?
It's all the above. I mean, read, research, talk to other artists. Don't be afraid to talk to really well-known artists. I mean, I had some of my students go to New York and see some of the top graphic designers that have been at the top of the field for the last 30 years. And they called them and went in and talked to them in their agency.
And that's one thing that I think I've noticed as much as anything, that established artists aren't afraid to share with.
We love to do that.
With younger.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're coming up to me, and that takes courage to come in and talk to someone you don't know who's been in the business. I mean, I did that when I moved to Tucson. I mean, I tracked down artists that I knew were, successful artists. And I was, okay, what do you think of my work? You think I got a shot at this thing or not? But because that's the way to do it. Just don't be afraid. Nobody's going to bite your head off.
Yeah. Yeah. So for that young person out there, it's just kind of an all of the above. How important is the business side of what you do?
Yeah, the business side is not my favorite side in a lot of ways.
And you're not the only artist who said that.
Yeah, I know. We want to be making art. We don't want to deal with. But as part of it is, I have an accountant. I work with her. She says, do this, and I do that. I follow her exactly what she wants me to do, take care of expenses and everything else. And so when I'm filing taxes, I'm on the ball. I'm not falling behind on anything. And it's just, okay, what I want to say, I don't spend a lot of money on things if I can avoid it. I want to put, some money in the bank if I need it. So I'm trying to be, frugal as far as I'm handling my finances, and then being able to talk to people who are good at what they're doing and ask them and say, okay, what do you do? How do you do it? If you need a studio space, there's a lot of different options you can do. And
I've been to your studio, and you work in a studio adjacent to your home. And so it's all right there in one spot. But, some people don't have that ability. They don't have much space.
When I moved to Tucson, I hooked up with Metal Arts Village, which is like 10 studios.
Yeah, and that's what I want to tell you. That was my next and probably final question, or close final question. I met some friends of yours at Metal Arts Village. Yeah. There are other little consortiums of artists in the Tucson area.
Yeah, I mean, they're up in Scottsdale, they're up in Phoenix. I mean, any city has that community somewhere. I mean, you have to search it out, I think. But I mean, being around other artists on a daily basis, even for just camaraderie of it or getting help doing something, very helpful. It really is. because you pick each other's brains, and if you have a problem, talk to someone who might have a solution.
Yeah, that's probably really good advice for any of those young students out there, young artists that are coming along. Our guest today has been Al Glann, Tucson sculptor, Tucson, Arizona guy who has a show called Al Glann Poetry in Motion here at the Museum of Western Art. And I think it's a fun show. It's got a lot of cool little pieces in it and some great big ones. And we encourage everybody to get that website. On our website is out there. You can get all the details about when we close the show and all of that. And Al, how do people reach out to you if they want to know more about your work or see it or buy it? Or you have a website and Instagram?
You can email me from that. You can text me. You can call me.
What is that website?
alglannsculptor.com.
Pretty simple. alglannsculpture.com. And they could reach out to you from that and look at your work, see more of it. And Al, it's certainly been a pleasure. Here we sit down and banged out 30 minutes in a podcast, and it didn't even seem like it was. We're just getting ready on a conversation, but we try to keep these podcasts where people want to listen to them and they don't drag on for 3 and 4 hours. But we could talk about art for a long time. But we appreciate you, putting together a show. Our thanks to Joshua Rose. Got to make sure that Josh how'd you meet Josh?
We taught together in Phoenix.
Okay. So you were instructors there together. And of course, he's now running the Native American Arts program there in Santa Fe. He's got his own so Josh is one of the good guys in the Western art world, or in the art world. I've known him for 1,000 years. And he pointed out, I said, I was looking for lots of little shows, one gallery shows that we could put together. And of course, he said, I've got a great one for you. And he just sent me to Al Glann. Who in the world is Al Glann? I mean, but I sure am glad that you've come into my world and that we've been able to put together this show called Al Glann Poetry in Motion.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
All right. Our guest today has been Al Glann, a sculptor from Tucson, Arizona. You want to know more about his work? It's at Al Glann Studios. alglannsculptor.com, alglannsculptor.com. Of course, you can find out more about everything at our website, if you're not following along on our website, by going to museumofwesternart.com. One word, museumofwesternart.com. We're 1550 Bandera Highway in Kerrville, Texas. We hope you'll come by and see us. And Al, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.